vintage Barack Obama there. David Tafuri knows a thing or two about vintage Obama. He was a foreign policy advisor to the former president's campaign in 2008. I really want to welcome you to the program. Much has been said and written in recent days about that close, loyal relationship between Obama and Harris. And his public words so far, though, have been few. In fact, the Clintons beat the Obamas in backing Harris for this nomination. Is that over now in terms of the fact that, do you believe the former president will be very forceful, very enthusiastic in his speech tonight?
I do think he will be. Happy to be here in Chicago talking about your question, the home of Barack Obama. And he's really excited, of course, to be giving a speech tonight in his hometown, and he was instrumental in making sure that the Democratic Convention was here in Chicago this year. He has an old friendship with Kamala Harris. She was one of the first people in California to endorse him in 2007 when he was running for president, when most other elected officials in California had gravitated towards Hillary Clinton. So that was an important support that he needed and that he has remembered. You mentioned that he endorsed her when she was running in California. And of course, he's been a bit of a mentor, giving advice to her as she has been vice president. And his endorsement is a very important one. And I think he will be very forceful in his speech tonight about her, but he'll also probably tell some personal anecdotes about her, things he only knows about her to share with the American people.
Yeah, and certainly that sketch of the person is really important during these conventions. I want to point out that polls show that despite this recent momentum that Harris has had so far, she's not fully won back those Biden voters from 2020. And I'm speaking especially about Black voters, Hispanic voters, in some cases male voters. What can we hear from President Obama specifically that you believe will help Harris in that regard?
Well, of course, he has a lot of appeal to each of those segments of the voting population that you mentioned. And a lot of people miss him, including from those populations. So he has the charm, the ability, the oratorical skills to motivate them. But I also think it's important to note that Harris has only been the nominee for a few weeks, and the polls sometimes lag behind. So I do think we're going to see more of those constituencies lining up behind her as we see new polls, and she's going to get a bump likely from this convention, including with those populations.
And so we will see the president speak on the stage. How much more involved do you believe the Obamas will be, though, in the weeks to come, given the challenge that VP Harris has in front of her?
It's hard to say. I think they, like President Biden, who spoke about this last night, are very worried about the prospects of Donald Trump returning as president again. So they would support any Democratic nominee, but I think that's extra motivation for both of the Obamas to do everything they can to support Kamala. They very much don't want to see Trump back in the presidency. And they also, because they have that long relationship with her, that special friendship, they have the ability to get personal in discussing her and why she would be the best next president. And I think they're going to utilize that on the campaign trail.
David, before I let you go, we have to talk about what's been going on in the Middle East. I mean, look, you were involved in foreign policy, no doubt frustrated many times by the situation in the Middle East. What do you believe can happen in historic terms going forward for a Harris administration, if that happens, to finally get something done here?
Well, first of all, I would say it's really important for the Harris campaign that there is a ceasefire. And you heard President Biden and talk to the American people last night about he's as close as ever he has ever been before towards getting a ceasefire since October 7th. I thought that was surprising because most of us thought that the ceasefire is off track since Hania, who was the person who was in charge of negotiating for Hamas, was killed in Iran. But apparently they've been able to get the talks back on track very quickly. This is really important not just to the Biden administration, but to Harris and her campaign, because as universities reopen in the fall, I don't think Harris and those supporting her and her campaign staff want to have to face protests across the country. That's going to rile up the left. That's not going to be good for the unity of the party. So that's another reason.
Right.
But we don't know whether they're going to get over the hump between Israel and Hamas. There's a couple of sticking points, mainly dealing with Israel wants some continued presence in Gaza. It wants to have checkpoints that will prevent the flow of weapons and militants from southern Gaza back into northern Gaza. And we don't know whether they've been able to reach a compromise on that, but that's the main sticking point.
Yeah, and it sounds like not so far, but I do appreciate, again, you putting it on the table that, look, the Democrats, especially this Harris campaign, needs this deal, as of course do the people of Gaza and Israel. David Tafuri, thank you so much. Enjoy your time there, and we will be right back with more from the DNC.